A lot of the people who are these conspiracy theorists against HAARP say that things like earthquakes, droughts, storms, and floods, diseases like Gulf War syndrome and chronic fatigue syndrome are attributed to HAARP. They also say things like the 1990 crash of the TWA Flight 800, the destruction of the Space Shuttle Columbia, also attributed to HAARP. It's a big old catch net for crazy.
Yeah, this seems like, hey, my bank account is empty. It's because of HAARP.
HAARP did it.
It's attributed for everything.
Yeah, although to the credit of, putting it to the hum, right, it does do radio frequencies. And it's a pretty big old thing up there. So,
well, I don't know.
It's high frequency, though, which is what Joe kind of brought up.
It's what?
It's
high frequency. It's high frequency, yeah.
Not low frequency, so.
Yeah, it's kind of at the other end of the spectrum. But, maybe people can actually, some tiny minority of people can receive radio waves, high frequency ones in their brains.
Although I don't know that it would necessarily translate to.
Well, again, I think it's what we were kind of alluding to earlier is you can't actually hear it.
Yeah.
So your brain is doing the translation, but because it doesn't know what it is, it's a bad translation.
Yeah, that's
so then
fair.
it comes out into this weird range that people are reporting hearing.
Yeah.
Which seems to be an issue if there's recordings of it, but there's that.
There's that whole problem.
Silly recordings.
Yeah, well, we don't know if those recordings are real, though. So,
it's all a lie.
Yeah, another conspiracy theory.
Okay, so as we said earlier, some people were like, well, it's just tinnitus, which I think is the dumbest answer ever.
Don't mask your feelings. Just let it out.
I'm trying to not show them at all. You guys know what tinnitus is, right?
Yeah.
It's that ringing that you hear in your ears.
Ringing or a high pitch.
I totally thought it was totally normal until I found out literally 2 years ago that not everybody has ringing in their ears all the time.
No.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, really? All the time?
I totally have tinnitus.
I have the same thing.
Yeah.
I have. I get just an occasional spell. I'll just be sitting there, and all of a sudden, it almost seems like a little veil goes over my hearing. Like the volume of everything around me goes down. And
that's just
ringing.
old age.
That's a what?
That's just old age.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
No, that's been happening since young age. It's been happening since I was.
Well, you've been an old person since you were born, apparently. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, so tinnitus. If you don't know what it is, I guess go look it up.
Well, no, tinnitus is actually pretty basic.
Yeah.
What it is. How your hearing works is that I don't remember, it's a spiral-shaped vessel in your ear.
It looks like a snail.
Looks like a snail, and it's full of fluid, and it's full of hairs. And as the fluid in there is moved by pressure of sound, the hairs pick that up and your brain interprets that as noise. And so that's how we hear. When you get really loud noises, things that damage your hearing, they think, this is the last time I read anything on it, is they think that what happens is the pressure change in that organ or in that spiral is so violent that it actually snaps those hairs or those filaments. And so what was, let's say this tall, the length of my finger, is now been chopped in half or a third of its length. So it's gonna vibrate much easier and more rapidly. And so it's sending these signals to your brain saying, I hear noise, I hear noise, I hear noise. But it's so your brain is interpreting this, but it's not actually supposed to be that way.
And it's worth mentioning that it's not only you can be born with it. It's not just sound damage that happens.
It's sound damage the
it's
typical
more frequently
way.
that it's sound damage. Most, kind of baby boomers have it kind of a little bit at least.
Too many loud concerts.
Yeah. And a lot of people of my generation, which I'm not going to say which generation it is, have it because we listen to music real loud on our headphones. But yeah, it's just, you can be born with it. You can do it to yourself.
And you can lose hearing that way. You lose. Most people today don't have the same hearing range as people 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Because of cars.
Yeah.
Because of the frequency that cars put out noise all the time. Because we're exposed to it constantly, it's just damaged, and so we don't hear all of the noise that a car makes when it's on and driving because our ears are just shot that way.
Yeah, so I think, tinnitus I think it's very clearly the problems with this as a theory is it doesn't explain why people only hear it in certain geographic locations.
No.
You know?
It wouldn't also explain the louder at night.
Well, I think it makes sense to me. Like my tinnitus, for instance, is louder at night because there's less happening. There's less to distract me from it. I'm more aware of it. However, it doesn't explain why it only, like, people age into it and out of it.
Well, and I can't get away from tinnitus. I can't drive away from it.
Yeah, and it's not like, oh man, it's coming from my left ear. Like, oh, like it's there. I know it's in my head. I'm not suffering any kind of delusions that like, wow, this is a weird noise coming from outside of my head. No. And I don't think that has ever been the case even when I was a child. I don't think I was ever like, wow, there's a weird ringing happening all around me. It was like, wow, there's a weird ringing happening in my ear. You know, I think people with tinnitus kind of recognize, wow, that's a weird thing happening in my ear. And I also, it doesn't really go away if I cover my ear.
That actually gets louder.
Yeah, it makes it worse.
Yeah, don't cover your ears.
Well, okay, so
never wear earmuffs.
So we're going to say no to tinnitus.
We're saying no to tinnitus.
There's another theory out there that's not as prevalent, that it could be what's called tonsor tympani muscle syndrome.
What is that?
I know, seriously. In your ear, there's this little muscle called the tonsor tympani muscle. It's a muscle that kind of can exert pressure on your eardrum. And, make it tighter or less tight. And when this muscle is activated, it can actually tighten to the point where it's vibrating, and you get a sort of sensation that's kind of like a rumbling. And you've experienced it. I experienced it a few minutes ago when I yawned.
Oh yeah.
I yawn, and you know how when you yawn a real deep yawn, you hear that you feel that sort of
weird
flutter
rushing
in your ear.
Yeah.
Kind of a pop.
Yeah, kind of like this. I hear kind of a sort of thing in my ears when sometimes
he's got a '57 Chevy in his head.
Yeah, so that's another possibility. Is maybe these people have something going on with their tonsor tympani muscle.
I guess, and that I guess my problem with that is the same kind of with the tinnitus. Is that like why only in these certain geographic locations, and why so prevalently in these geographic locations? Right? It's not like a couple people in this one area are saying, "Oh, I hear this noise." It's like 2 to 11% of the population in any given kind of hub of the hum are hearing it. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's something, maybe there needs to be more research into this syndrome. Maybe there is something that could be affecting people in this area. But
speaking of research, like say in Taos, how many people in Taos reported this as happening? Hundreds?
Lots.
Yeah.
It was 800 in Bristol. I don't think I have a number in Taos, but I think it was almost 11% or something like that of the population, which is fairly substantial. And the fact that you could record it, or that people could measure the hertz that it was, right? That to me means that it's external.
I don't know how they did that. If they, I'd have to look into the research and find out if they actually went out and found the noise, recorded it, and measured its wavelength, or if they just played sounds to people who claim to be hearing. Basically, like you go to the eye doctor, and they just play sounds. Well, does this sound like it? Well, how about this? How about this? And then finally, when they get then they settle on that as a frequency.
The articles that I've read about people trying to track it down is they've gone out with a mic and all of the audio equipment that it's portable, you're carrying it, and of course, as they're listening to it and with the headphones and they're, oh wait, I think I found it. They're looking at the meter, and the meter is registering this stuff, and I think that's how they're doing it, is actual real world walking around with a mic to try and pick it up and pinpoint where it's at.
Yeah, and then after that, what would be interesting is to say Bristol, for example, if they could actually take a map of the city and plot out the occurrences of this all over the city and find out sort of if there's an epicenter of it. Is it uniform across the city, which doesn't really make sense to me.
I think they have done that with the data collection that they're doing. They say you have to be pretty specific about where you are. And they have a map you can see. And I don't know, I haven't ever looked very closely at a city. So I can't remember it, or I don't know, I guess, if they do it within a city, but they do it within countries.
Well, the map on one of the links where they were mapping it out,
yeah.
I loaded that map.
You went all the way down?
I went all the way down. I zoomed into Portland just to see what it was like in the city, and it's all over the city. And when you're zoomed out on the country or the world, it's just those silly little those little blips that mark your location on the Google Maps, just
everywhere,
wallpapered in them. And it wasn't until you got in pretty close that they started spreading out. So people are reporting them literally everywhere.
Oh, so if this isn't geographic specific, then maybe it is some form of hearing problem.
I think it's meant to. I mean, I think it is geographically. I don't know how specific the data collection that's happening with this Hum website is. I don't know if they're actually filtering any reports. I know on their website they do say, oh, if you're not sure if it's the Hum, don't report it. But this is the internet, and it's hard to kind of cull that down to what's legitimate and what's not.
And anybody can just go into this document and then put this stuff in. So you got to figure there's at least a few pranksters that are putting stuff in.
Well, and I also, when I was going through it, you can tell the people who really care.
Yeah.
Because they fill in, it's a spreadsheet. They fill in every cell on that spreadsheet.
And there's a lot of cells.
And then there's, it's like 15 questions or more per report, but a lot of them, it'll be the location, the date, and maybe one or two other little bits. A lot of people are just giving the minimal amount of information, which is, unfortunately, kind of corrupts the research and the data, because you've got a bunch of red herrings.
Yeah. So, and it's worth mentioning, since we're talking about this little data collection thing happening, some of the questions they're asking are, how close are you to a power line or to a power hub? How close are you to a gas line? How close are you to like these other theories that people have kind of thrown out? Like maybe it's, it's just a power station. Maybe it's because these communities are close to that. Maybe it's a gas line. Maybe this is the noise that gas lines make, things like that. They're saying, how close are you to this?
Looking for man-made explanations.
To kind of see if there are any really...
patterns?
Yeah, patterns, I guess is the word that I was looking for, It's to go back to our theories...
Oh, we were doing theories?
I know, we were doing theories.
Whoops.
There's one other one that may be internal, and it's called spontaneous autoacoustic emissions, which I know sounds a little dirty. I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
But apparently the human ear generates noises called spontaneous autoacoustic emissions, which affect like 40 to 60% of the population. And most people are like unaware of them. I guess as far as I can tell, it's kind of like tinnitus, but it's not. It's not forever.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because that sounds exactly like tinnitus when I was doing the reading.
Yeah.
But I didn't catch that it just goes away.
Yeah. I think it's just like it happens every once in a while.
Huh.
It's not a constant sound. As far as I can tell, that's the difference. Next is that it's colliding ocean waves.
Yeah, this one is kind of a head scratcher for me.
I don't like this theory very much. I think it's dumb. That apparently waves in the deep sea can collide in such a way that send out a noise. And I think this mostly pertains to coastal communities that are affected by the Hum, as far as I can tell.
Well, I think we've all been at the ocean when it's really windy and you're not on the beach, you're a couple of miles away, but you can still hear that noise that's made from the surf.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this is going. Water makes a lot of noise. Waterfalls do the same thing.
I think a little bit. It's more like a mix of that plus like the bloop. Like these weird noises that happen when like two deep ocean waves collide. They make this frequency that can travel. It's fairly low frequency. I don't know. I know that there's some research.
This is underwater is what they're saying?
No, it's in deeper oceans.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like hitting the coast.
I mean,
okay.
If there is like some sort of collision that makes a noise like that, and it's very low frequency sound waves do travel a lot further through the water than high frequency ones do.
I guess the U.S. Array Earth Scope, I don't even know what that is, has tracked down a series of waves that I guess they're kind of like compression waves that do produce kind of humming noises a little bit. But I don't think that goes far enough to explain what these people are experiencing, particularly in a place like Taos, New Mexico.
Well,
right?
exactly. When these guys are saying like the sounds of these collisions of waves could travel far, far away, that's true. But in the water, they don't climb out of the water on the west coast of the U.S. and walk over to New Mexico.
Right. So like it might explain Bristol, which is a coastal town, right?
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't explain landlocked Taos. Like Taos also, I don't know if you know where Taos is, but it's like pretty north New Mexico. It's like center north New Mexico. It's pretty landlocked.
Is it in the
Rockies?
Is it the Rockies? Suddenly can't think of what that major string of mountains that runs through New Mexico
really
is.
Huge, the Rockies go through Colorado.
Yeah,
and then south into New Mexico.
do you know which side of the Rockies Taos is on?
I'm guessing the east side. Do you know?
That'd be my guess too.
Yeah, which means that you would think that if it was coming from the ocean, okay, let's just say these ultra low frequency waves are bouncing up and traveling across the land, they're gonna hit mountains, which are gonna slow them down and stop.
And then you got to think too that the sound would be incredibly painfully loud in coastal communities.
You would see this instance more heavily in coastal communities, right?
I think that as far as natural explanations, I think that seismic activity or geothermal activity is, I don't know if anybody's ever investigated that or not.
Yeah, I think it's kind of been floated. I don't think anybody's done any kind of serious research into it, however. But that is kind of a nice segue into this next theory, which is that it might be underground drilling. Kind of covert underground drilling, right?
So the government's like, or maybe it's the lizard people.
Yeah, it's the lizard people.
Yeah.
So I guess there's kind of a consistent trend with the communities that this is heard. Is there more suburban? Like more out. They're not
rural.
They're not rural.
They're not rural
because they are communities. They're like villages and towns, but they are not urban. So, I guess you could kind of say that, that would be a good target for people to be drilling under, right? Because there are people there, so like it would cover up some of the noise or whatever, right? But it's not a thriving metropolitan area. I don't know.
Well,
I think it's kind of...
So you're talking about like horizontal oil drilling or something like that?
Yeah, like fracking, but not really.
People are drilling in the ground constantly. It's not just for natural gas and stuff like that. I mean, people are drilling for wells and things like that. And the Earth is full of cracks.
Yep.
I mean, the mantle of the Earth, of our planet is not a solid chunk of rock. It is full of all kinds of veins and pockets. So, I mean, I could see that. Let's say that I'm drilling 100 miles from here in an area that's okay for me to drill for oil or water or whatever I'm drilling for. And then those cracks don't just go, they go horizontally and then they make their way up. And that could leak out, I guess is a way to say it.
I guess. I just think all I can ever think of when I think of underground drilling is Ocean's 13 when they're drilling under Las Vegas.
I didn't see
that. I don't think I saw that one. Yeah.
Listeners, help me out. I'm doing the show with old people, apparently. No, so, I mean, they do that. They did it with the Max Tunnel, too.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Underground drilling. And those things, it's just a plate. It's not an actual drill, right? There's
no,
just like a drill bit. It's just a plate.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of various. There's a bunch of those things out there, and it looks like this.
It's like a
big
cheese grater.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just this flat thing with all these
just goes,
wheels set in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty awesome. I want to get one.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think if there was any kind of proof that things were drilling under there, that would be a good explanation. But I think that at this point, people would have had to say, oh yeah, no, we were drilling under that place, right?
But people don't always realize that drilling is going on. Do you realize that in the city of Portland, they were drilling for 15 or 20 years? For the entire sewer redo that they did here.
Pipe? Yeah.
The big pipe. It was called the Big Pipe Project. And they were drilling from one end of the city to the other, and it took them 10 or 15 years. They were drilling every day, nonstop.
Yeah. Well, maybe it is underground drilling.
But this kind of stuff happens in municipalities all the time, and people don't realize that it's going on. They may sort of be aware, but they don't really think about it. So then they're hearing this weird noise.
And I guess that would be another argument, actually, like for that these are like less urban places, right? That like when drilling's happening underneath us, we've got like a bustling city happening. We can't hear what's going on down there, right? But if it's a smaller community and they are drilling under there, who's gonna? I mean, you hear it.
It's an evil genius building his bunker
Under
for the
Taos,
mole
New
people.
Mexico. You're right.
It's me, yeah.
There is one more kind of, since we're talking about the Earth.